But you know what? That's the magic of podcasting because I've got three kids, but they all have special needs. And until I started podcasting, I was like, nope, I'm stuck in this bubble. We're in therapy and school and all these things all day long. I don't have the ability to go have friends, and I feel so disconnected from other moms. And it wasn't until I started my podcast that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. There are so many other moms. There's so many other people. There's so much out there in this big, huge world. I don't have to stay trapped in this bubble. And what's more, I can podcast with my kids at home. I can do it messy. I can do it whatever way works.
Solidarity sister. Solidarity sister. I am so excited to get to share this particular episode with you today. Karaleigh Garrison is a podcast coach, speaker, singer-songwriter, and the mama of 3 special needs kids. I'm also grateful to call her a friend. Buckle up and hold on tight as Karaleigh takes us on a journey through some heavy survival years with trials and triumphs leading her to where she stands today. And tune in to the end to learn about how you can work with Karaleigh if you've ever considered starting your own podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solidarity Sister. I have Karaleigh today. She runs a podcast and helps women who are learning to podcast, which is fantastic. So I'm really excited to have her because she has been a huge part of my podcast community, and we're talking a lot about community here. So Karaleigh, tell me, how are you doing today for real?
I'm doing so much better than I was yesterday and the last few days. Like I'm feeling like a human being again after we've been sick for a week, a little over a week actually. So I'm doing pretty good. I didn't take Tylenol today, so that's really like a strong indication of how I'm actually doing because I've been really dependent on Tylenol to function for the last week and a half. So yay.
That's fantastic. It always makes it hard when the family gets sick over the holidays.
Yes.
It's an especially difficult time. So I'm glad
Yes.
that you are feeling better. That's
Well,
awesome.
and what's more, my husband's feeling better because he's back at work today and he was homesick the last 2 days. And when the husband's feeling sick, it's almost worse than me being sick.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do understand. It is a rough run. So what are you listening to lately? What are some of your favorite podcasts, audiobooks, music? Like what's in your ear?
Oh my gosh. So I just started this community. It is called the Podcaster Support Network. And one of my New Year's goals is to listen to as many new podcasts as I possibly can. So I have like a gajillion new podcasts on my list so that I can, just support all of these people. And I have been listening to some really amazing brand new podcasts. So the one I literally just finished listening to and reviewing is called True Fertility. And I listened to several of her episodes and they were so good. And I'm like, I've not struggled with fertility, but like listening to these women's stories, they were really good. So her name, I'm gonna have to look it up, is Leah Nicole Trujillo, and her podcast is called True Fertility. And like, I'm like, this is not even a topic that I dealt with in my life, but hearing these women and their stories is just like, you just love them for their stories and their authenticity. And it was so good to hear their stories. So that was the one I just finished listening to. It was so good. I loved it.
And I think that there's such a value in being able to hear the stories of people having experiences that are not
Yeah.
the experiences you've had. Like there's
Yep.
a place for having a support group or whatever for what your difficulties are. But it opens you up so much more when you're willing to take a look at other people's hard.
Yes.
Can we really know what it's like if you haven't struggled with infertility? Do you really know what that's like? No. But the more that you listen and hold space for people that is really a huge part of their life's journey,
Mm-hmm.
better we become at showing up for other people because we get
It's
like at least a glimpse of understanding just by listening and really trying to sit with that and hold space for that. So I love
Yeah. And the truth is, like, we've all felt those feelings. Even if we
100%.
haven't, like, had those exact experiences, we've all felt those feelings. And, like, in my Seeking Sunshine podcast, I've interviewed lots of people with all sorts of different stories. there's this quote from Mr. Rogers, which I think it's actually wrongly attributed to him, but whatever, it's you when you hear someone's story, you can't help but love them, and it's just really true.
It is. It is. I think so often when we really are able to just be quiet and listen and hold space for that, we can't help but love people. Even the people that
Hmm.
don't really resonate with us or that maybe we don't see the world the same way. We at least are then able to understand why they behave the way they do. I know my brain doesn't work like a lot of people's. And I'm sure there are times where people are like, I can't believe she's doing that, or like she's doing it that way. But if they were inside my brain, it makes sense.
Well, and to me, that's the true gift of podcasting, and that's why I'm obsessed with podcasting, is because you just how many other times in your day do you sit and just listen to somebody else? Do you just sit face to face and only, like, no multitasking, no, other agenda, where you just sit face to face and have a conversation with someone? And as a podcaster, I get to do that. I get to hear people's stories and just do that and connect with people. And so for me, podcasting is the best form of social media because we're really connecting here in a way that we don't do on other platforms. It's the
I
best. It's my
100%.
favorite.
I started this podcast because I just felt so strongly that it was something I had to do. And I don't even listen to podcasts. That's kind of one of my goals is to make myself do that. I listen to tons of audiobooks, like hundreds a year, but I haven't been a podcast listener. So I felt a little bit like an imposter, but I was like, sometimes you just have this inner knowing that there's something that whether you want to, depending on where you're coming from, the universe or God or whatever is presenting to you and saying, this is for you. And you just have the option to say yes or no. And so I said yes, but what I didn't anticipate was the beauty of the community within podcasting. And every time I have an interview, like how often in my day as a mom of 8 kids, 7 who are still at home, do I get to sit for 45 minutes to an hour and talk to another person in a super connected and vulnerable way? It just doesn't happen. I think I'm going to have my neighbors that I really like on as guests, just so I can book an hour for us to talk
I
because it's hard
know.
to arrange that in your regular everyday life. But it's this connection that most of social media is kind of missing. There's this emptiness. It's like a false connection, which sometimes I do think there are places where you can still really connect on Facebook or Instagram, but that's not the norm. That's not the way it's really set up. Whereas
Well, and
podcasting is set up to be more inherently connective.
there's an authenticity to hearing somebody speak where it's not filtered through, I don't know, photos and literal filters and, agendas and all these other things that just comes through in podcasting like no other way. And like you and I are not that far apart
I know.
geographically, and
Been
it's
needing
like,
to meet and we're like an hour away from each
I
other. But
know.
here we are on Zoom and we're just gonna embrace that and go
But
with
you
it.
know what? That's the magic of podcasting because like you have all these kids and it's so hard as a mom to get out of that bubble. And I've got 3 kids, but they all have special needs. And until I started podcasting, I was like, nope, I'm stuck in this bubble. We're in therapy and school and all these things all day long. I don't have the ability to go have friends, and I feel so disconnected from other moms. I feel so alone. I feel so trapped in this bubble of motherhood, and so many other moms feel like that, whether or not their kids have special needs and all that. It's motherhood can feel so isolating. And it wasn't until I started my podcast that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. There are so many other moms. There's so many other people. My life's not the only life that's hard. Like, there's so much out there in this big, huge world. I don't have to stay trapped in this bubble. And what's more, I can podcast with my kids at home. I can do it messy. I can do it,
Yes.
whatever way works.
It's absolutely doable. So tell me about your experiences with community. You talked about being isolated as a mom, and now you're kind of coming into these different communities. Like, where are you finding community right now? Are you finding it at all in real life, or is it more just through podcasting and through these virtual connections?
It really is through podcasting and through virtual connections because in person is still really difficult because I have three kids with special needs and they take a lot of physical reining in, should I say. I have a high functioning autistic 9-year-old and 13-year-old, and they're pretty good when we're in public. I mean, at home they fight a lot, but in public they're pretty good. But then I also have a severely autistic, semi-verbal, diabetic 12-year-old. And he is a little wild when we're in public. He's the one who's running all over the place, trying to open everyone's car and trying to open all the doors and do all the things. And he's the one who needs my attention every single moment. And when I'm trying to socialize with other people in public, my attention is very divided because it's on him, because it's trying to keep him safe. And, we're getting to the point where it's not as necessary as it used to be. It used to be he would run through the parking lots and open other people's cars while they were driving, and it was really unsafe. We'd pull into a parking lot and he'd be unbuckled and out the front door because the two side doors would be child locked. He'd be out that front door before I could unbuckle my seatbelt and like out the car. And it was so fast and it was so dangerous. Like I was so worried about him being hit by a car, and it took, I mean, keeping him safe took like I was so hyper vigilant all the time. Just every ounce of my energy and of my attention was on keeping that kid safe. And yeah, I had two other kids to also pay attention to. And like they didn't get as much of my attention as they probably should have because I was constantly trying to keep Joshua safe. And so as far as social interactions were concerned, it was like, well, sorry. I mean, a really hilarious example of this just happened like a year, not even a year ago. We went to a church function and it was somebody in our church they do smoothies. They have a big smoothie after church party and they invite everyone over for smoothies and it's so great. And we walked over to have smoothies and there was this new couple and they walked over and she had this orange energy drink and they were brand new. No one knew them yet. And my son Joshua walked straight up to her, pulled her energy drink right out of her hand, and drank it all. Because he's been a drink thief since he could walk. Like, if someone has a soda, he's gonna steal it. And he hadn't done it in a while, so it took me by surprise. And I had forgotten for a half a second to be hyper vigilant. And she was like, oh, and like, is the caffeine gonna hurt him? And I'm like, no, he's fine. I'm so sorry. Like, and she was fine, and it was fine, but it was just one of those like, oh, I forgot to be on for a second. I talked to somebody. I wasn't as on edge as I'm supposed to be for a second.
As you had these experiences, what are the most helpful and unhelpful responses you've gotten from people? Because we've all been out, at a grocery store or somewhere where a kid is like going bonkers in whatever way. What do you find is helpful or not helpful from the people around you? Because I think there are times where people can actually make it better. And then there are times where people really just like kick you while you're down.
What's helpful is patience and understand. What's really helpful is always assume that people are doing their best.
Yes.
Always assume that everyone is trying their very best. I mean, you never know how much or how little sleep that mom got that night.
For sure.
Like, you just never know, like, what else is going on in any given moment. And I've had people, I've had good reactions and I've had bad reactions. One of the things that Joshua loves to do is push the button on the receipt tape machine. And so every store that we go to, I have to be really, really aware because anytime he's within running distance of the receipt tape machine in the checkout line, he's gonna push the button. And the little button on the receipt tape machine that makes the receipt tape go and I've had all sorts of reactions to this. And you should know that I'm totally aware he's gonna do this. I'm doing everything in my power to stop it. And he's very, very fast. He's very strong, and I can't always stop him. I've got two other kids who fight nonstop.
And he's bigger now, too. I think sometimes that's harder. Like a
I'm like,
2-year-old is easier to physically manage than a 12-year-old.
yeah, he's 12. So I'm, trying everything in my power to make sure this doesn't happen, but I fail probably half the time. And so I've had people go, "Oh, it's fine, just let him push it." And I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm trying to teach him not to." So no, it's not
Sure.
fine here, just let him do it. No, I don't want him to do it. So yes, be patient. But then I've also had people freak out and be like, "He's gonna push it. Don't let him do it." And I'm like, I'm obviously wrestling my kid to the ground in this very moment. You can probably see me sweating my face off. Like, you're panicking. It's not helping the situation here. Like, clearly, I'm doing everything to stop him. So, like, that's also not helpful.
No,
Just patience,
overreaction.
right?
Not
I'm like,
helpful.
just patience and
Yeah.
understanding and just assuming that I'm doing everything I can to stop this. And
Mm.
it's not always an option for me to not take my kid to the store with me.
Hey.
It used to be an option to keep him in the cart all the time, but now he's 12 and that's not an option anymore.
Yes. So what about like people who would know, like we all know moms that have some special needs kids that are really challenging. I mean, I think of one mom that I know that I grew up with, and I don't live near her, but like, what are the things I could do or say that would be more helpful and more supportive to her? Like a care package kind of item to send or something. Like, what makes you feel seen and heard and understood? Either the people who live close to you or, who live far away but care and notice. What would make you feel supported?
Just saying that, like just saying I see you is so powerful. Like you really don't understand the impact of those words, like to everyone, not just to moms like me, but to people who are starting their podcasts. Like that's one of the things I've been trying to do. That's one of my like New Year's goals is like to reach out to all these new podcasters and be like, I've listened. I've been listening to your new episodes. They're so good. I see you. I see how good it is. I see how hard you're working. You're doing great. Keep going. And like to say that to any mom, to say that to any person, we
Yes.
never can hear that enough. Of
I,
I see you and what you're doing matters. And you're working so hard and it's not going unnoticed. You're making a difference. You're making an impact. You have influence in this world because we don't get told that often enough. It doesn't matter what your circumstance is, the effort that you're putting forth matters. It's making a difference. Everyone needs to hear that.
I agree with you. I've seen several of my friends post this, like, tell me something you're proud of that you did in 2023 kind of a thing. And I love to read those because I learned things that I didn't know. And this year, I actually felt like, oh my gosh, I'm starting this podcast. Like, I actually feel proud of something I did because the last couple of years have been absolute just survival. And I feel like I would have been the one who was like, like we're all still alive. We survived. Like that would have been like the accomplishment. And I see people post that and I keep going to them and saying, but that is huge because I've been there in some years.
Yeah.
Like you cannot underscore like the hugeness of an accomplishment that it is some years to just say, I survived this whole year because some years are just so hard that you're not going to be out starting a podcast. You're not going to be running the marathon or starting a new business or volunteering a million hours or whatever. Like literally, you're going to have just made it.
I have a decade
Did it.
of those years. I have an entire decade of those years because for anyone who doesn't know my story, I've got my three kids with special needs, but also my husband was disabled, is disabled. He's actually doing way better now. He's had this crazy miraculous recovery, but he's been disabled for a decade where he was collapsing multiple times a week, and I was carrying him to bed for a decade. Like I was in that survival mode for a decade where survival was all we could muster, was like getting through. And so like you build on that time. That time is how those lessons, that's how I got here. I built on all that time to get to where I'm at now. Like it's those stories that I tell now in my podcast.
And those are the things that gave you the resilience and the problem solving and the creativity and the passion to move forward when the time could allow that
Yeah.
and when life could shift in different ways. And I think there's so much value in hearing that, because there are times where we are just in a valley that feels like it will literally never end. We're just going and slogging through, and it can be very just depressing to feel like it will never be any different. Like this
Yeah.
is what life is. And I don't think that's true. I do think there are seasons that 100% are that way. But I think that life has so much that's fantastic to offer us too. And the light always comes. There's so much in nature that reminds us of that, that like every day there's a new sunshine, every month we have a new month. The moon makes a cycle. We see the leaves fall off the trees and there's new buds. But like sometimes winter's really long and then spring comes. And so I think that's powerful to be able to look at the people around us and acknowledge the people who are in winter and say, like, I see you. I see all the things that you're doing and striving for. And that is so hard. And to learn to celebrate the happy parts, like when spring comes and it's
Yeah.
better and it's summer and I live for summer. I hate winter. It is snowing here and I hate it.
Yeah. Same here. I was like, what is all this?
I
I
know
hate this
someone
now.
posted
Why?
the meme that was like, whether you hate it or not, it's still snowing, so you might as well like snow or something like that. And I was like, no, I'm actually going to still hate it. Thank you. I reserve the right to hate the winter.
Don't tell my husband I turned the heater up to 77 and I have a blanket on. My basement where I have my office is freezing. And so the rest
Oh,
of the house is warm, but my basement's not. And then I'll turn the heater down later.
hopefully spring will come. So tell me about some of your biggest life challenges. We've talked about this a little bit, but as you face these different things, like where are the places that people have shown up for you?
So my biggest challenges, we had our worst year ever in 2018. So it was about halfway through 2018, right before the pandemic. So then when the pandemic hit, I was like, wait, this is it? This is the worst thing in the world. Oh, this is easy. I can handle this. All we have to do is sit home and do nothing. Oh, no one's dying. I can handle this. So at the beginning of 2018, we lived in San Antonio, Texas. And it was right at the peak of my husband's disability, and he has something called familial episodic ataxia, which is a genetic chromosomal defect. So he wasn't disabled by some big event. It was a really kind of slow, like around the time he turned 30, it just started getting worse and worse and worse. And it started with like he would have panic attacks and back spasms, and he would be crying on the floor in a ball and just racked in pain. And
You guys then had
um,
no idea what was going on.
yeah, it took like 5 years before he finally got the right diagnosis and got everything. I mean, he also has other diagnoses. He's probably on the autism spectrum. Which we have 3 kids with autism, so that all totally lines up. And he's got severe debilitating PTSD. He's got depression and anxiety. He's got chronic back pain and all sorts of different kind of diagnoses. Ataxia is a really fascinating condition, but when it's episodic, a lot of doctors don't believe you because it's really rare. And so no one's ever heard of it. And so basically he would tremble and collapse and stutter when he was speaking, and he couldn't hold his own weight and he couldn't stand back up. And so I'd have to lift him and carry him to bed. And then he was so weak that he couldn't function for hours or days after an episode. This went on, I mean, it was really, really bad for a few years. And then he was put on this water pill that seemed to help, and but he wasn't able to work for a few years. And so he finally, got on all the right meds, and he was on about 12 different prescription medications for like really strong pain pills and antidepressants and all these different sort of things.
Well, and nothing's going to make your depression feel worse than being bedridden and having your body fall apart. Like even if you
Oh
were
yeah.
supposed to have depression, there's a whole emotional component,
Oh yeah.
a mental component anytime someone is working through severe physical challenges.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm
Oh yeah.
sure he would be
So,
miserable.
oh yeah. And so he finally was approved for SSI, which took a few years of applying for. And so at the beginning of 2018, we got this back pay, and he'd been not able to work for years. So we had zero income, and I was caring for him and all three kids. And at that time, two of our kids had autism diagnoses, and we were doing 4 hours of therapy after school every day. And he was home with our baby, with our youngest, which only worked sometimes because for a while of it, he couldn't stay home with the kids. He couldn't watch the kids because he kept collapsing. And that was really unsafe. And he would collapse anytime he was too stressed out. And that could be physical stress or emotional stress. And our kids were really stressful. I mean, I was telling you about Joshua running out of the car. Like, Josh wrecked our truck when he was like 4 years old. Like, it was, which was actually because there was a defect in our truck. Like, there were no keys in the car when he was able to pull it in reverse, and it rolled back and wrecked. So like it wasn't actually our fault that he wrecked the truck. It was because you're not supposed to be able to pull the car into reverse when there's no
If
keys in
there's
the
no
car.
keys, it's supposed to be okay.
Yes. So yeah, I had gone to go get the mail, which was 5 feet away, and left him in the car with no keys in the car while I walked 5 feet away to get the mail. So that was, anyway, that's a different story. But so we got everything like kind of tentatively settled. Like we finally got the SSI in, we got all the meds, we got the doctors all settled, all the kids were in therapy, and it was like, okay, we're kind of living, kind of, right? And then we got this impression of like, you need to go finish your degrees at BYU. And we were like, what? Because we lived a few blocks from his parents, and they were watching our kids all the time while I took him to the hospital, because we had a whole year in 2015 where he was admitted to the hospital every month. Like, he had back surgery at the end of 2015, and we relied on them really heavily. And so we had this really strong feeling that we needed to move back to Utah. And we are like, nope, hate Utah, don't want to do it. Pass.
I can
No,
relate.
thanks, God. I don't want to do that. But it was really strong and undeniable. And so we were praying about it, and just knew. We just knew we were supposed to move back to Utah. And so I had this experience where I was praying about it, and I was like, okay, fine. We're supposed to move back to Utah. But are we going to be okay? And I got this really clear answer of like, it's not just going to be okay, it's going to be amazing. And then what followed was the worst year of our lives. And we took the leap, and we moved back to Utah. And the closest family we had was his like 90-year-old grandma up in Salt Lake. So we moved to Provo, so it was about an hour away for anyone who doesn't know Utah. And so she's amazing, but she's not tons of help with our autistic kiddos. And so we moved away from our support system, and we moved up to Provo, and we tried to move into this rental house, and they stole a bunch of money from us because the unit was not live-in ready like we thought it was, and they refused to give us our money back and took us to court and threatened to sue us into the ground, and it was a whole thing. So they stole a whole bunch of money from us, and then we found what I thought was our dream. It was our miracle house. I was so grateful for our miracle house, and we moved in like August, and then the week before Christmas, the landlord showed up, and we'd never met him before. I didn't know who he was, and he showed up at our front door and pointed his gun in my husband's face and undid years and years and years of therapy just like that, and that was awful. And I had auditioned for the School of Music to study opera when I started BYU in 2008. So a decade before this, when I was brand new, I was like, my dream in life was to sing and be a singer. And I didn't get into the School of Music in 2008, got married, had kids, we moved away, and it was like, okay, I'm going to come back to BYU, and I'm going to get in the School of Music. And that's going to be why my life's been so hard. It was because I was going to fulfill this dream. And so I was gearing up to audition again for the School of Music. So my audition was in December, and I was taking lessons again, and I was so excited. I was like, this is it. This is it. I'm so ready for this. And in October, so we moved back in August, and Jacob and I were both full-time students at BYU with three kids at three different schools. So Aurora was, I think she was in first grade. She was like 8, maybe first or second. I think she was in second. She was 8. Joshua was 7. So I think he was in first, and he was severely autistic and completely and utterly nonverbal. And then Benjamin was in pre-K, and we had him at some preschool a few days a week. And he did not have his autism diagnosis yet. He got it a few years later. And so three kids at three different schools. Jacob and I were both full-time students at BYU. And it's one of those experiences, this one that like you just don't forget, like seared into my brain. Because it was the first Saturday of October, which is one that we don't forget. Joshua walked out of his room that morning and he was really sick. And now I'd had this experience like a week before where Josh was completely nonverbal and he was 7. And I had this like Facebook meltdown where I like went on Facebook Live and I like cried and I was like, my son's never gonna talk. I give up. He's never gonna say I love you. He's never gonna say, Mom. I give up because I can't handle hoping for this anymore. He's 7. We've had intensive therapy since he was 2. I can't keep hoping for this. Obviously, God has decided that this is our life. And I just can't keep praying for this because we had, my 3-year-old Benjamin, our whole family, but, my little 3-year-old Benjamin was praying with our family that Joshua would have a voice one day. And I couldn't keep listening to that night after night after night, like it was tearing my heart out. So I had this Facebook meltdown where I was crying and I was like, I give up. I cannot keep hoping that Josh is going to talk someday. And so about a week later was the first Saturday of October, and Josh woke up that morning and he was totally different because Josh is my very, very, very hyperactive kiddo, running out the front door to open people. I mean, he opened our neighbor's car while they were backing out of their driveway while I was hanging up Christmas decor, like scary, like bounced off the walls. We had to have him on so many meds just to keep him like at a super hyper level. Like he was so dangerous all the time. And he walked out of his room slowly, walked, didn't run, but he looked like he had lost a ton of weight overnight. And like he liked to come out of his room like in just his underwear, and you could see like his thigh gap and you could see his ribs. And I was like, what happened? Have I been so busy with college and with this move that I just didn't notice? Like, what is wrong with me that I didn't see this before? And I had to message his teacher and go, did he look like this yesterday? And she's like, no, he looks like he lost 10 pounds overnight. Like, what happened? And so he walked in the living room and curled up in a ball, and all he did was sleep for the next 3 days. And I had this like internal conflict in my head of like, oh my gosh, he's dying, like something's horribly wrong. And like, no, he's just sick. He's just got a stomach bug or whatever. Like, he's just sick. Just calm down. And I let the logical side win. And we went through the weekend, and by Monday, I was like, all right, he's still sick. So I took him to the pediatrician, and I had to carry him into her office because he was so weak he couldn't walk into the office. And I was like, something's really wrong here. And I get in there, and he is laying on the floor of her office. He won't even lay on the bed, and she didn't even look at it. And she's like, it's just a stomach bug. It's not a big deal. He's got autism. We could get a blood sample, but it's too hard to get blood from a kid with autism. So just give it a few more days. He'll be fine. And I'm going, look, I've got 3 kids. We've been through a lot of stomach bugs. I'm not new here. I've done this before. This is not like anything I've ever seen. Something's
And
really
you know
wrong.
your own kid. Like
Right.
that mom intuition.
Yeah.
Like,
And so she did nothing and sent us home with nothing. And I was like, "Ugh." And so my husband and I are still full-time college students, and we're trading off who's staying home with the sick kid. And so a couple days later on Wednesday, I'm in class and my husband texts me a picture of Joshua laying in bed, which Josh would never lay in bed. He only slept on the floor. And I was like, but he looked drastically worse. Like his skin was gray and his eyes were sunken in. And I took one look at that picture and I was like, no, no, I'm not gonna sit here and watch my kid die. I'm not doing it. And I left in the middle of my class and I took him to the ER and they took one look at him and they knew. And they were like, we need to get blood from this kid right now. And let me tell you, it took 5 grown men and me holding him down. This kid who I had to carry into the ER because he was so weak he couldn't walk. Took 5 grown men and me to hold him down because he fought like a saber-toothed tiger to get one little drop of blood from his finger. We're not talking like a big IV or whatever. We're talking like a prick
Right.
of blood from his finger. But all it took was one drop of blood from his finger, and that was the answer. And he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and he was in diabetic ketoacidosis, and he was definitely dying. And so they actually sent us to Primary Children's because that was in
That's the
Riverton, which
place to
is
go. Yes.
yes,
If you
yes,
have a
and
child in Utah or anywhere in the
yes.
region, surrounding states, that is the place to go.
It really is. They were amazing. So they sent us to primary, and I get up there and they admit us, and I'm like, you guys don't understand who this kid is. He's gonna burn the hospital down and he's gonna change the language on all your computers to Japanese. Like, you don't know who this kid is as soon as he wakes back up. Like, you don't know what this kid's capable of. And they were really great. And they had a nurse like just sit at the door all night long so I could sleep because I was like, any moment he's gonna wake back up, tear this place apart. And they had to keep getting like finger pricks of blood every, I don't know, every hour or something. And every single time they did, like they didn't have a team. It was just me and the nurse. And he would like tear chunks of my hair out. And then like we couldn't get any more, but he was severely dehydrated. Like they had to have an IV. I'm like, this was my worst nightmare is to have this kid hospitalized. But so the next day, he didn't wake up for like 3 days. Like he basically just like slept all day for 3 days. The next day, they had me do all this parent training of like, here's, you just have to count every single bite he eats for the rest of his life and stick him with needles forever, to keep him alive
That's all.
for the
Thank
rest
you.
of his life. That's all. And I had my moment out with God where I was like, hey, this is not okay. This is not my definition of amazing or okay or anything in between. Like, hello. But I come back to that moment all the time because it's really easy for us to get stuck in these moments where we can't see the big picture, where all we can see is this thing that's going wrong right now. And we can't see the next chapter and we can't see the miracle that's ahead of us. And we can't see how God's working in our lives. And all we can see is what's right in front of us. And so whenever I'm feeling like this current thing that's happening to me is the worst thing in the world, I go back to that moment in the hospital because it reminds me that there's so much more ahead that I can't imagine yet. And I just have to wait. I just have to wait because there's more ahead than I can even fathom right now. And so Josh was in the hospital Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they sent us home. And he went back to school on Monday and he pooped in the potty for the first time in his life. We'd been trying to potty train that kid for like 4 years. And just like that, he pooped in the potty because there's this thing that happens after you get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes where you're starving all of a sudden. And he had been chronically underweight for years and years and years. And we'd even tried prescription medications to get his weight up. And all of a sudden he was eating. I mean, all he would eat was corn dogs. So he was eating like 9 corn dogs a day. We were like going to Costco and buying like a bunch of the Costco size packs of corn dogs. But he was eating. And like we hadn't been able to get him to eat before. And now he was eating. And finally he was gaining weight that we've been trying to get him to gain weight like his whole life. And within a month, he could say all of his colors. And we'd been trying to get him. I mean, we didn't have a single word that meant anything up until this point, and his speech just skyrocketed from that moment on. And within a year, I was begging for him to shut up because he was talking all the time. And, he's got childhood apraxia of speech and so for a long time, he was talking and talking and talking, and it was really hard for him to understand. But now we're 5 years later, and he's not that hard to understand anymore, which is, I have this thing I love to say, which is that there's blessings in every trial and trials in every blessing. And so I thought type 1 diabetes was the worst thing imaginable. And it turned out to be this huge, huge blessing. And I wanted for so long for Josh to talk. And now I sit here and all he does is he yells penis jokes through church all Sunday. And I'm a little bit like, oh yeah, I really wanted him to
I
have a
prayed for
voice.
this.
I prayed for
prayed
this.
for this.
And he tells grandma and grandpa to shut up all day long. And I'm like, oh, yes, I prayed for this. Now he says whatever he wants to. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I wanted. And it's all in your perspective, right? Of like, is this a blessing or is this a trial? It's always both. It's always both. But so he was diagnosed and I auditioned for the School of Music in December and I got through to the second round, and in February was my second or in January was my second round of auditions, and I found out in February that I didn't get in. And I actually had them reach out to me and say, please don't give up. You were so close. And they only let like 3 or 4 people in. It's like a really, really difficult
I didn't know.
program. Yeah, and they reached out to me and they were like, go audition to this school and this school and this school. Like, you were so close. Don't give up. And I was so devastated that I don't even think I responded to their email. And I didn't think I was gonna ever sing again. Like I was like, obviously, like singing's not meant for me. Just this dream I had my whole life. I'm obviously terrible at it. Like no one wants me ever. But as Joshua, began to talk more and more and more, I came because these life lessons that we look back, right? And I tell you the story of Joshua. It's not like I realized it all at once. It's not like I was like, oh, Josh is diagnosed with diabetes. And the next day I was like, oh, this is a gift because he can talk now. No, this took,
It's a process.
it's a process. We look back on our lives as a whole, which is like, this is the gift of podcasting for me because it's made me look at my story from the step back, from the big perspective of like, oh, that's what happened in the big picture instead of, keeping that little narrow lens. And so I looked at the music thing and I was like, oh, maybe my music dream can look different than I thought that it did. If Josh's journey to speaking can look so wildly different than I ever had anticipated, maybe my journey to music can look completely different than I ever thought. And so I took a songwriting class and I hadn't written my own music since middle school. And I had this realization that, like, oh, I don't even like opera. What? I was only pursuing opera because I thought I was too fat to be on stage to sing my own music. And like I had this, this realization of like, wait a minute, if I actually got what I wanted, it would mean me being gone from my kids every night at rehearsals and doing performances. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not the life that I want.
Oh, bless you. I don't like opera either.
Right? I'm like, I love singing it. It's so much fun to sing, but I hated, like, I didn't listen to it for fun. I didn't even like going to the opera. I was like, meh.
For real.
Singing it was really fun, but like, no, I didn't just listen to it. I was like, but writing my own music gave me the freedom to like sing what I wanted to sing about. I was like, wait a minute, if I was doing opera or any kind of theater for that matter, like somebody else would be telling me what to wear. Someone else would be doing my makeup. Somebody else would be telling me where to stand and what to do every single second. And I was like, that would suck. Why did I have this dream for the last like 20 years of my life? Did I ever really think this through? And so I started on this whole journey of like learning how to write better music and write from my soul and how to produce my own music and how to like write really, just really good music and how to I wrote my own album. I wrote and produced and released my own album, and my album's called Seeking Sunshine. And at the same time that I was writing my album, it was when I launched my podcast, Seeking Sunshine, and started telling my story. And as I processed my story, I was processing all these emotions into music. And I released my album in May of 2023, which is no longer this year, which I've been saying for a long time. But then I started writing custom songs for people and writing custom podcast music. And it was like, oh, I don't have to be on stage performing every night, which would be great, but it doesn't work for my kids. It doesn't work for my life. I can actually be home and still use all my gifts and my talents. I can still speak. I can still have an impact and have influence. I can still use my voice and my musical gifts to help people and do it from home with my kids. Like this is actually all possible, and it looks completely different than I ever thought that it would because of podcasting. And like one of the songs that I wrote is called Wait, and the chorus is maybe it doesn't have to look the way you thought it did. Maybe it's not too late to change your mind and change the world. Don't give up just yet. Wait. And it's kind of been like this theme
I
that like
know. Yes.
yeah, it's my song, and that's the background music that I use underneath my intros and my all my things. And like my husband was like, that song saved me because it's like all those times when we're like, I don't see the next step, I don't see the future, I don't see how this is going to be different. Just wait.
It's hope.
There's
What it
yeah,
is hope that there is something more coming. And sometimes it's really, really hard to hope. But there's a lot of power in it. And it's not the same as wishing. Hope and wishing are not the same. Like wishing doesn't have that same kind of power. But there's a lot of impact when you have hope that things can be different, even if you can't imagine exactly how. But you have hope that there is something there. I think that something materializes. I think it's like, everyone talks now, it's big to talk about manifesting and whatever. But like honestly, our thoughts have such a huge drive to what our futures are going to look like. So call that manifesting, call it not, whatever the energy we bring to life, it does return to us, not always in the time that we wanted to, not necessarily in the way we expected.
yeah,
Listening to talk about your experiences, I think about times where we heard a no and didn't get what we wanted. And one in particular, we went to law school. I say my husband went to law school. I helped him with the logic games when he was preparing to take the LSAT because that was the part I was good at. But I did not go to law school. But we had two little kids. And when he came and he said, I think you should go to law school, but we already have two kids, I was like, we're still in our 20s. Like, please don't be 45 and tell me you want to go to law school. But like, we're in our 20s. We can do anything. Our kids are little. And so his first semester, he'd never really learned to study. My husband's super brilliant, but that allowed him to not really study and do well enough in school. And so suddenly he was kind of being asked to study, and he ended up in a study group that wasn't super helpful. And his first semester grades were not what he was looking for. And so that first summer, you do these like internships or different things in between in the summer, and there was an opportunity for a paid one. And as like having a family, and we were like one of the only families there, like
yeah,
people at the law school were not like, there were younger people who weren't married. And we did not get that internship. And I was so devastated because I felt like I'm doing everything I can. And we really needed that money, quite frankly, to actually like live. And it was really rough to figure out what to do. And in the end, he ended up taking some extra classes over the summer he hadn't planned on. And he did very well on those. And it changed his GPA enough that when the interviews came in the fall for what we do the next summer, he was able to interview with a firm that wouldn't have taken him had he not taken those summer classes. And then because of his experience with that firm, he was able to end up out of law school, work for Sidley Austin, who's a huge firm, and all these things. And I look at like, if I had gotten the prayer to have that one internship, because I was like in it, right? You're in the middle of it.
yeah,
You don't have that like broader focus. You're just like in the willows in that moment. That's all I could see. And that was the answer to all our problems to me, was to get that one internship. But I'm so grateful that he didn't, because if he had gotten that internship, our whole life trajectory would have changed in like dramatic ways that I can't imagine would have been as good as what we were given.
Mm,
Sometimes those no's feel devastating. Like you didn't get into the opera program,
mm,
you really wanted that, but like, what would you give up if you'd gotten that yes?
so
So
much.
many things that you wouldn't want to give up. And for opera,
Mhm.
like, I mean, bless the people who are good at opera. I'm like, yeah,
Well, and it's funny because I'm like, I'm good at opera. Like it wasn't
yes.
like if it was any other school, I am actually sure that I would have made it. And I had chosen BYU because they were so family friendly. And what's amazing was like I ended up double majoring in family studies with an emphasis in sewing and theater studies with an emphasis in costume design. And I loved studying costume design and
Fun.
makeup design. Like I did makeup, like special effects makeup design. And as I looked back on, like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that, like pursuing that as a career and all of that. And it's like, so then what was the benefit of it? It's like I gained so much confidence in myself and in who I am and my abilities and what I can bring to this world through that costume design major. So much confidence.
And
Like
that's huge.
it
How many
changed
times do we feel like we're
me.
stumbling because we don't have enough confidence? Like, if that's all you got out of college, that's huge.
Like,
That's a huge benefit. And I'm sure there was more to it than that.
yeah,
But that's phenomenal
yeah.
able to
Like
come
it,
out, because then it also prepared you to be able to then have confidence to podcast and to
yeah,
produce your own music and to, reach out and create a group and do this. And, tell me a little bit more about the community you're forming. I know we have been in a podcasting community together, which has been fantastic. And I love, like, to me, that was like the best part of being part of it, was
yeah,
not just the instruction part, but it was the networking part and the making these fantastic connections with people who are cheering you on. Like, I just can't underscore how valuable that's been to me. But like, tell
yeah.
me about your vision moving forward for this podcast community that you're creating.
Yeah. So I have my podcast Seeking Sunshine and my album's also called Seeking Sunshine. But I realized that like what I really like podcasting is my favorite. I love podcasting. And so I actually started a second podcast and it's called Podcast Like a Mother. And I teach people how to podcast through that second podcast. And so I am now teaching podcasting and I teach podcasting one-on-one and I'm about to launch my podcasting course coming up in February. And so as sort of part of all that, I just started a Facebook group called the Podcaster Support Network. And it's just a place for all new podcasters to come and share their shows because like we need a place for podcasters to come and have a place where you can share every single episode. You can share all of your questions. You can every time you want to change your cover art and you're like, I'm not
What do
totally
you think?
sure.
This one or this
Like,
one? Yes.
right. It's like there's so
Like the
many
thought
questions
here
that
in the
we have, right? And it's like
yes.
come share it in a place where we can all support each other and we can go listen to each other's episodes and write each other reviews and like be a group of people who's supporting each other because we just need that community vibe, just like you were talking about.
I love that. And we'll put all of that in the show notes about where people can find you. I know you have a website as well.
Yeah.
And so that will be fantastic. And I
Which
want
is
to
just
ask,
CaraleghGarrison.com. So it's really easy to find if you can spell my name, which is the
yeah,
hard part.
that's why we'll put it in the show notes. If you had a gigantic billboard that was going to be like where everyone in the world could see it, what would you put on that billboard? What message would you want people to have?
To me, the biggest problem in the world that if we could solve this problem, it would solve like almost everything else is people knowing that they matter. And so I would put on there, you matter. You matter so much. You are needed and you matter. And like that's it. Like you are needed in this world. Your voice matters, and you have a difference that you can make. People need your presence right here, right now.
I love that. And I think it's so true. And I think it changes everything about how you go through life if you feel like you can make a difference. Whether your job is, to be a CEO of something and you're realizing you can make this difference, whether your job is you're a retail employee and customers are coming through and they're coming from all different spaces and you can make a small difference in their day, or whether you're a mom that stays home and you are with your family all day, or you're a mom who works from home, or all the like, if you know that you matter and that you can have an impact, it changes the way you view life, and you will feel better about life. You feel that purpose to live a purpose-driven life, and you'll make life better for other people.
You start teaching other people that they matter because moms who know how much they matter start teaching their kids how much they matter. And
Yes,
moms who don't feel like they matter, guess what message you're teaching your kids?
it's so true. And you think if you sacrifice everything of your own, like lay yourself out on the altar, that is going to be like the magic thing that teaches your kids just how much you love them. And there is a place 100% for mom sacrifice. But if you sacrifice beyond what's maybe reason, I don't know what the word is and how you find like that balance, but if you don't preserve some self-love and some self-care, really you're teaching your kids that they don't have permission to do that either.
They follow your example.
It's not the message you mean to send, but if you don't find that place, and it's hard, and we don't do it in every season, and I'm coming out of a season where I really didn't do it, and I'm working on doing it more.
Yeah.
And so if you're not doing it now and you're listening, it's okay. We've all been there.
We're teaching our kids what motherhood means. And what does it mean to you?
Absolutely. And when you still go after what you're passionate about, you show them that they can go after what they're passionate about, which doesn't have to be something big. It can be something very small that really you are just doing at home. There's nothing wrong. Like I don't like when women feel like, well, if I don't start a podcast, start a business, become an influencer, whatever, that I'm not doing. No, no, no. If your place is at home and you feel good about that, then like you go for it, but do it with a passion that this is what that the purpose that you're filling, and feel good about doing that. But it's finding that place where you are living with some purpose and you're feeling attached to that purpose and that you matter and that others matter. I love that message. Karaleigh, it's been fantastic to visit with you. I'm so grateful for this time and space that here we've been trying to meet up, and at least we met up on Zoom. We've got
Yay.
that going for us, the gift of podcasting. And we'll definitely put in the show notes everything about how to reach Karaleigh if you're looking for podcasting support, especially if you want a custom song. I actually considered having Karaleigh do a custom song for me,
Yours
but
is amazing, though. I heard it. It's so good. You
there
did
was
an
this
awesome
part
job.
of me that really, I've never composed anything in my life that I can remember. I mean, maybe when I was 5 years old, but I've always liked to sing and I've always liked music, and I play the piano and help lead a choir. But I really felt like there was like a jingle inside of me that needed to come out. So I was like, I am going to figure this out because it needs to be mine. But if I were not doing that, I would have reached out too.
No,
So
I think yours, if you can, like, if you have it in you to like sing it and do it yourself, always do that. Like,
it
always
was
do that.
fun. I learned about GarageBand. It's like that one random app on my phone I never used before, but now I feel
Woo! I love it.
semi expert. No, I'm just kidding. I'm barely proficient, but it was enough. Technology's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for listening to another episode of Solidarity Sister. Wasn't that awesome? Big news for our same day listeners. Today, Karaleigh is hosting a free 1-hour webinar called Mobile Podcasting Made Easy. Did you even know that you can produce a podcast straight from your phone? Karaleigh can show you how. Her Podcast Like a Mother podcast creation course is a great option if you're looking for more than just 1 hour of support. I love the way Karaleigh has made the first 2 segments free, so you can get an idea of what she can offer you before needing to order. Links to register for the webinar and to start the course are both in the show notes. Solidarity Sister celebrated 2 months yesterday. I'd love for you to celebrate with me by sharing a favorite episode with a friend or leaving a review if you haven't yet. And see the show notes if you need to figure out how to join the Solidarity Sister Book Club as we read Brené Brown's Gifts of Imperfection together. Thursday night marks our 4th Zoom call out of 15, and we'll be discussing the things that get in the way. Thank you for being part of the Solidarity Sister community. We needed you. Solidarity.